Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and this is going to be part 4. Let's just tutor. While Tula and I are working on our handiwork, a knock came on the door. We exchanged glances and she went to see who it was. Yes, who is it? It's me, lads. I brought some stick parts for the hairpins. Tula unlocked the door and pulled it open with a creak, allowing Lutz to walk in with a gust of cold air and the snow stuck to his clothing. Wow, it seems cold. Is it snowing or what? There's a lot of snow built up on the way to the well, but it's not as bad as it could be, said Lutz, as the rest of the snow fell off of him. Here, the sticks. There's 9 since each of my brothers made 3. Lutz lined up the pins on the table. Once that was done, Tuli stood up and brought over the finished flower parts. Want to go ahead and finish them up? That way we'll know how many more sticks we need. It seems that Tuli had made quite a lot of flowers while I was sick and bedridden. I looked at the flowers on the table and asked Lutz something. We have 12 finished flower parts. You brought 9 sticks. How many more sticks do we need? Huh? 3? That's right. Good job. I see you've been studying. Mom, Tuli, please take care of finishing the hairpins for me. I'm going to go tutor Lutz, I said. After seeing the stone slate and calculator in Lutz's bag, Tuli blinked several times and tilted her head. I heard that you were doing math stuff at the gate, but how do you know enough to teach someone? I'm hurt you think I don't know enough math to teach it. I pouted at her continued lack of faith in me while Lutz grinned. Tuli, the thing about mine is she's crazy good with letters and math. Sure, she's crazy weak too, but still, she knows some things. You know, I would have liked you to stop after the first line. I glared at Lutz, but Mom and Tuli just laughed. It accomplished nothing. Lutz took out his stone slate and pen, so I raced to the bedroom to get the bundle of usable fail paper I had shaped into a memo pad and my sit pen from the back box. My plan was to use tutoring Lutz as a cover for making a book. Under normal circumstances, it felt like I was being lazy and avoiding work by trying to make a book while Mom and Tuli worked on handiwork. But I shouldn't stand out too much if I was just writing alongside Lutz while tutoring him. Okay, it's time to make a book. I was writing on the memo pad whenever I found the time, so it had a decent chunk of Mom's stories written on it by now. But it was far from being called a book. I hugged my memo pad, sit pen, stone slate, and slate pen close to me and excitedly headed back to the kitchen when I suddenly heard Mom say something. You know, Lutz, Carla and your family are against you becoming a merchant, aren't they? Are you fine with that? I gasped at the sudden serious topic and slowed down, silently tiptoeing to the kitchen. Tuli had frozen in place after hearing Mom's question. Lutz was sitting in front of her, looking at Mom with a stony expression. I sat next to Lutz, and Mom looked between us before continuing. I'm wondering if you said you wanted to become a merchant because of mine. Are you following along just because you're a nice kid and want to take care of her? No way! I asked mine to introduce me to Otto because I wanted to be a merchant. I'm the one who wrapped mine into this, Mrs. Effa. Lutz corrected her immediately. Lutz had wanted to become a traveling merchant, talked to a formal one, learned about the city's citizenship, and decided to instead become a normal merchant. I honestly had nothing to do with that series of decisions. Mom gave a small nod and looked at Lutz quietly. Okay, I understand that you want to become a merchant yourself, but you'll try to keep looking after mine even once you become an apprentice, right? Apprenticeships aren't so easy that you can survive like that. You'll be so distracted by her that you'll work till your work will suffer. I was right next to Lutz and thus heard him gasp in surprise. He hadn't considered that. Mom's words also pierced my heart. She wasn't wrong. I bit my lip and Lutz shut his head up. I want to become a merchant no matter what. It's happening right now thanks to mine. That's why I want to help her as much as I can. But that doesn't mean I want to become a merchant for her sake. So, if mine were to theoretically quit due to her weakness, would you continue your apprenticeship? Would you keep being a merchant? Yeah, hypothetically, yeah. Would you do that if she was to stop? Lutz, clenching his fist tightly on the table, looked Mom in the eye and nodded slowly. I would, definitely. My mom and dad just keep telling me to be a craftsman, but I've worked to get where I am without them, and I don't want to quit now. Even if mine told me to give up, I would still keep working. Lutz had his own dreams. His decision to be a merchant rather than a craftsman had only strengthened as he spent more time at Benno and Mark. Working with me was the best way for him to become a merchant, but he wasn't becoming a merchant for my sake. I see. In that case, I think you're doing the right thing. I've only ever heard Carla's side of the story and never yours, so I wanted to clear things up here. Thank you for being honest with me. To Carla, it probably looked like I was dragging Lutz everywhere. That wasn't completely wrong since my help was putting him through a lot, which is probably why she only listened to half of what Lutz even said, and why she thought that Lutz might change his mind if she was harsh enough. It wasn't too long ago that she asked me to stop him, but I turned her down, so... Mrs. Effa, there's something I want to ask you too. And what might that be? Mom tilted her head a little. Her quiet eyes made it clear that she would answer honestly. Relieved, Let's sucked in air and continued. Mrs. Effa, why aren't you opposed to mine becoming a merchant? If merchants really are hated by everyone like my dad and mom say, why don't you mind? I knew that craftsmen didn't like merchants since they took handling fees and were always stingy about profit, but still, saying merchants in general were hated by people was just going too far. As if she had heard my thoughts, Mom looked at me and raised an eyebrow. Different people have different opinions of merchants, so I don't have anything to say about that. But, well, I suppose I'm not opposed to it because mine's been sick and weak for so long. Lutz blinked in confusion, which made Mom laugh. To be honest, I never thought that mine would ever be able to work a job at all. I never even considered that someone would rely on mine for anything. So if she's found something she's good at, something that benefits others, something that she's willing to put her all into, I couldn't imagine opposing it. Mom's words squeezed my heart. I felt her motherly love for me so much that my eyes teared up. Alright, maybe if I put my all into this, they'll accept me too, murmured Les with such an uncharacteristically bitter tone that I squeezed his hand. I hope they do. Yeah. Which means it's time to study. Les smiled and the room lit up instantly. The serious atmosphere vanished, and Tuli finally breathed out in relief. She had been holding her breath. Wow! Mom took her sewing box and worked on sewing the flower parts of the hairpin onto the pin parts. I watched that from the corner of my eye and tapped my stone slate with a finger. First up, we're going to practice the alphabet. Try writing them all out so you can see if you have them memorized. Alright. After giving Lutz an assignment, I got to work writing down Mom's stories onto the memo pad. The slit pencil resulted in pitch black lines, which was problematic in some ways, but unlike ink, they didn't cost money to use. I glanced at Lutz's stone slate from time to time while writing the stories. I could see him writing letter after letter without pausing whatsoever. His study was going so well, it was almost unbelievable. That's good! He's doing well! He knew that the other apprentices would have an advantage over him due to his limited opportunities to study, and thus devoured as much knowledge as he could. Not to mention that the worst-case scenario, he was even preparing to leave his home if his family remained opposed to him becoming a merchant. I knew that was exactly why he was hurrying to learn as much as he possibly could before it was too late. Looks like you already know the alphabet. The letters are neat, too. Very nice, Liz. It's just 'cause you wrote your example ones so good. It was hard to write neat letters without drawing the lines over and over to implant the movements into your muscle memory. He didn't have memories of a past life like me helping him. I really had to respect the amount of hard work he was putting into this. Let's start working on your spelling now that you have the alphabet down. We could practice with how to write supply orders since you'll probably be writing a lot of those. I wrote a supply order for lumber on my stone slate. It didn't take long at all since I had written so many supply orders when making paper. While I wrote, I taught Les the names of workshops and foremen that Benno worked with often. This is the name of the lumber yard foreman. Here is where we put the name of the person ordering the materials. In our case, Benno bought the materials and sent them to us, so we put his name. This is the name of the lumber, and... Les looked at my stone slate and copied what was written with utter seriousness. Try and practice these so that when spring comes, you can order what we need to make paper. Huh? Me? Alright, I'll give it a shot. It was easy for him to work hard if he had a goal in mind, so once I gave him one, he immediately started poring over his slate to make sure he hadn't made any mistakes, then started practice writing them. I watched him for a bit, then opened up my memo pad again, and resumed writing. At this rate, it would be a long time before I finished writing all the stories. Let's practice math next, I said to Let's after finishing a story and stretching. Let's looked up from his slate, now covered edge to edge with words he was practicing, and nodded before wiping it clean and taking out his calculator. I wrote math problems on his slate. Today we were going over 3-digit addition and subtraction. After writing 8 problems in total, I stepped back and watched him work the calculator. Unlike before, his fingers glided across it with no hesitation. You're faster at using the calculator now. I memorized how to do 1-digit math because you told me to learn how to use this thing, and that's really all you gotta know to work fast. I think you're learning faster than I am. With simple problems like the one I was giving Lutz, I subconsciously did mental math despite my best efforts, and thus my fingers didn't move like they should. Which meant that, as always, I was faster at doing written math than using the calculator. But, well, I'm lending the calculator to Lutz most of the time. So there's really no way I could be faster than him. I was making excuses to myself. It was true that with little opportunity to use the calculator, it was harder for me to get better at it. But at the same time, if you asked me if I would actually bother to practice if it were at home with me all the time, well, that would be a hard question to answer. Looks like you have addition and subtraction down pat. The method doesn't change even with more digits, so that should be it for them. It's easy to get mixed up with a ton of digits, though, said Lutz while scratching his cheek. He had improved an impressive amount considering he started using the calculator just a month ago. I don't know how to multiply or divide on this thing, so we're kind of stuck here for now. Since neither of us knew how to use the calculator in full, I decided to just teach him the theory behind multiplication and division, along with multiplication tables. He wasn't being particularly elegant about it, and just introduced them in a 1 times 1 equals 1 structure without any fancy mnemonics for them like the ones I knew in Japanese. That made it harder for him to memorize them. But as long as he could shoot back an answer as soon as I lined up 2 numbers, everything was fine. Let's could now read large numbers and make change from larger units of money without error. Yay! With his learning speed, he had the knowledge necessary to get through his apprenticeship, with some hard work. But what should I do myself? Let's had his own work, and I would definitely be dead weight to him. I was weak, got tired fast, and was basically useless. I would hold him back no matter what. I can contribute by thinking up ideas for products, but since I knew so little about the culture of this world, I needed Lutz around to guide me. Speaking of which, Benno was worried about whether I could work or not, too. I remember Benno once asking me if I could even work at all with a sickly body like mine, and fell into thought. Winter afforded me plenty of time to think, so I wanted to really work this through while I had the chance. Could I work as a merchant without being dead weight to Lutz and the other employees working there? I don't know. We don't ever get to find out. Otto's counseling room. I couldn't think of a good answer by the next day. I was sitting at the table sewing and still thinking about it when Dad called me out to me. Mind, if you're feeling up to it, want to go to the gate? The snowing stopped last night. I looked up with an enthusiastic yes, and immediately started getting ready to go. I put my slate and stone pencil into the tote bag and put on a bunch of layers to ward off the cold. Otto was at the gate today. I could count on him giving me a harsh reality check if need be, given his experience as a merchant and status as a third party. I wanted to ask him if I would survive an apprenticeship with Benno. Naturally, there was a bunch of snow piled up outside. I spent most of the winter stuck inside and rarely left. The sight of snow piled up higher than I was tall made my jaw drop. The snow in the narrow alleyways leading to the main street had mostly pushed aside, but the walls looked like they could collapse at any time, and that was terrifying. Here you go, mine. Dad knelt down and held out his arms, so I went ahead and let him pick me up with my arms around his neck. He wouldn't make it to work in time if I had to walk through the snow. My head got above the snow since I was in Dad's arms. When a gust of cold wind went by, I saw a field of glittering white rising and falling in front of me. I thought that with this much snow, there wouldn't be many people walking along the main road, but there was a surprising amount of them hurrying along to their destination. There's a lot more people out in the snow than I thought there would be. Not often the snow stops like this, yeah. There's a lot less people when it's snowing, said Dad, speeding up because a bit of snow had started falling here and there while we talked. Here it comes again. Hold on tight, mine. We're gonna run. I'm gonna fall. We reached the gate in no time. After brushing the snow off ourselves, we went straight to the night watch room. Dad opened it with a light knock, and inside we saw Otto at the desk near the furnace, working on a huge pile of paperwork. Otto, I brought the helper you wanted. Move away from the furnace. Thank you, Captain. It's good to see you, mine. He cleared some space on the desk and moved to the side so that I could work alongside him. Judging by the overjoyed smile on his face, I could imagine that he had a lot of work stacked up. I took my slate and pen from my tote bag and climbed up onto the chair. Okay, mine, could you check to see if calculations in this section are correct for me? I wouldn't be able to ask him for advice with this much work piled up. I looked at the mountain of paperwork and readied my slate pen. For a while we worked in silence with only the sounds of Otto flicking the calculator and my slate pen accompanying us. A rough knock sounded on the door, and a young soldier came inside. Excuse me, I have a question for you, Otto. Hear that, mine? He's got a question. Otto pointed at me without looking up from his work. What? Me? Hold on a second. At least let me finish this problem. I finished the math and stamped the seal of confirmation on it before raising my head. The young soldier looked between me and Otto, who was blasting through his work at a furious pace, and sighed. He then took out a piece of parchment. What is this? Ooh, a letter of introduction from a noble. Is the commander here? No, I think he's on night shift today. In that case, get a seal and direct him to the inner wall as soon as possible. It's likely that even a normally good-spirited noble would be in a bad mood right now due to journeying through the snow, so go as fast as he can. If he has to wait, bring him to a waiting room with a fireplace as soon as possible and give him a cup of warm tea if you can. Understood. The young soldier saluted and rushed out of the room. I returned the salute and got back to work. You've gotten pretty good at that, said Otto without stopping his work. It's mostly the same thing each time, so I replied while moving my slate pen too. Work at the gate was basically bureaucracy in a nutshell. Once you memorized the manual, you could deal with just about anything barring extreme circumstances. I got a little tired after doing math for a while. I gathered up the sheets I had completed and stretched my back. Otto must have reached a stopping point as well since he did the same thing. Yeah, that's enough work to get tired. Want to take a break for a bit? Otto brought me some warm tea from the cafeteria. I sipped it and began telling Otto about my work troubles. And then Mom said this to Lutz. But you'll try to keep looking after mine even once you become an apprentice, right? Apprenticeships aren't easy that you can survive like that. You'll be so distracted by her that your work will suffer, I said, to which Otto nodded as if it was obvious. I mean, yeah, an apprentice that's already half as competent as an adult trying to help another apprentice will just end up hurting themselves. If Lutz actually wants to become a merchant, I can't see him helping you much at all. I knew it. As it stood, we weren't apprentices and we weren't working in the store. We were just bringing in products to sell, and that gave Lutz more than enough leeway to stick around me and keep an eye on my health. But once we became apprentices and had work to do, he wouldn't have that kind of leeway. I didn't want to put more weight on his back and potentially break him. I started to worry about what to do, and Otto looked at me with quiet eyes. Hey, mine. Do you actually intend to become a merchant? That's the plan right now. I know a lot of things that could be good products to sell, so... One had to belong to the merchant's guild to sell things, so I was pretty much locked into that merchant life to some degree. That's fine, but you should probably not join the Gilberta Company. Why not? Benno had more or less confirmed that he would take me as his apprentice. I was feeling uneasy about working there, but didn't know why Otto would warn me off it entirely. That store's growing fast. Everyone's working hard each and every day. I don't think you have the stamina to keep up with their pace, explained Otto with a shrug. His reasoning lined up exactly with what Benno had implied earlier, which was the source of all my unease in the first place. Benno actually said something like that to me earlier. He asked if I was healthy enough to do any work at all. There are some jobs that just involve sitting around and doing math or checking paperwork, but a merchant's work is always on a tight time limit. It'd be hard to trust a kid who collapses at the drop of a hat with important jobs like that. I knew that Benno was focused on earning as much profit as possible from my ideas, and didn't want to let another store get their hands on me. But when it came to actually working in his store, my stamina and strength were just fatally lacking. I don't think he would want to hire an employee so unhealthy they would be constantly missing work at random intervals. If I were in Benno's shoes, I wouldn't want an employee like that either. I have some thoughts that would normally be too harsh to tell a kid, but I can say them anyway if you want me to. Otto eyed me calmly, waiting for my reaction. I consulted with Otto specifically because I wanted a harsh, objective viewpoint that my closer friends and family would be unable to give me. I clenched my fist beneath the table to ready myself for whatever he might say and slowly nodded. Please do. The main reason I think you shouldn't enter the store is the effect you'd have on the other workers. It wouldn't take long for the delicate balance of human relationships to fall completely apart. Think about it. A new apprentice that just joined the store is constantly taking days off, getting all the easy work, and basically having an easier time than anyone else. Yeah, favoritism right there. Despite my health problems, others wouldn't be amused by the favoritism shown to me, and within weeks there would be problems building beneath the surface. I had been so focused on securing Lutz's employment that I hadn't considered what would happen after I became an apprentice myself. Not to mention, don't you think there would be problems with your pay too? My pay? I had never thought of my pay at all, so I let out a goofy point in surprise after he brought it up. Otto sighed as he saw me tilt my head in confusion. You're bringing such enormous profit to the store that Benno could never hire you with the same pay as a normal apprentice. I would think that my pay and percentage of the profits would be separate. We had contractually agreed to not receive percentage-based profits on the paper to secure our future jobs, but I fully intended to take a cut from products I introduced in the future. Far be it from me to hand over all my information for free. Even if he paid you separately for that, I can easily see your pay as a new apprentice shooting over that of a veteran employee with decades of loyal service. Honestly, that's just not going to end up well. Yeah, no one's going to be It's just like in the modern time. Like if you spent your 3 years at your job earning $20 an hour, for example, and someone comes in just starting out, never had a job, and ends up earning almost as much as you, that's not going to feel good to you. Few things could twist human relationships as easily as money. Otto was completely correct, and if things started breaking down there, the store itself would likely cease to function. Ultimately, all employees were important to the store's continued operation. You're right, no matter how I think about it, things would just be better if I didn't work in the store. Everything Otto said was right, and left me with no room for argument. I now felt that joining Benno's store as an apprentice would just breed more problems than to solve by far. And there's something else I'm worried about here. At this point, he had dunked on me so hard I was ready for anything. I nodded at him to continue. He leaned forward, lowered his voice, and slowly continued. So it turns out you're sick from the devouring after all. You knew Mr. Otto? I widened my eyes in surprise and Otto shook his head. Nah, I didn't know, but Benno brought it up as a possibility. I only confirmed it when Karina asked me if I knew a disease called the Devouring. Mrs. Karina? She's talking about how she saw Benno acting pretty panicked, which was rare for him. Apparently someone with the Devouring collapsed in his store and nearly died. For days after that, the captain was barely thinking about work. It was hard to look at him. Put two and two together, and I can guess you're the one who collapsed from the Devouring. It seems that Otto's information network was larger than I had imagined, though a lot of people had probably seen me passing out at Benno's store and getting carried to the Guildmaster's house. The captain seems to think you're all better now, but according to Benno, the Devouring is incurable, yeah? The Guildmaster had sold me a magic tool to drain some of the Devouring heat from me, but the heat will be building back up. Dang it. Building back up. Frida said that I had a year left at best before it overflowed again. I silently nodded. Did you tell your father it's incurable? No, not yet. It'd be hard to tell my family when they're so happy I'm better now. Right now, I really didn't want to talk about the price of magic tools and the time limit on my life. I was avoiding talking about the Devouring every time the conversation moved in that direction. Though it was also true that it was hard to go into too much detail when I only really knew that the heat inside of me was growing on its own and I would die when there was too much of it for me to contain. Shoot, I gotta go check the front. Otto shook his head slowly with a firm expression on his face. You should tell him. The captain thinks you're cured and that you'll be fine working when you're old enough. You should get everyone on the same page and have a serious conversation with about your future. If you just wing it, you'll be making things harder on a lot of people in a lot of different ways. I had indeed been winging everything I did and making life harder for everyone around me. So I had no choice but to take Otto's advice seriously. The fact of the matter is, you need magic tools to survive. You should go work for the Guildmaster if you want to negotiate with nobles for better terms. The Gilberta Company is large, but still relatively new. No matter how hard Benno works, history and tradition hold weight. He won't be able to change the status quo so easily. That's true, but... I faltered and Otto raised an eyebrow. Is there some reason you have to work at Benno's? No, it's just that I don't really like the Guildmaster too much. It's hard for me to deal with how forceful he is. Being forceful was definitely an important trait for a merchant, but I couldn't bring myself to like someone who lied about the price of the magic tools my life was riding on in an attempt to force me onto his side. I appreciated what he did for me, but I didn't want to be anywhere near him. Isn't Benno the same way? Benno's forceful too, and he's greedy, and he also tricks people. But I can tell that he's just noticing my flaws and trying to help me grow as a person. Oh? No. No. Oh? Otto grinned a nasty smile and I gulped. It would be safe to assume that everything I said here would be leaked straight to Benno. Great! That's not actually what I thought he was gonna do. Also, I still haven't decided if I want to live the rest of my life as a noble slave. I have finally come to consider my family here as true family. I was finally used to living life in this world, and I was looking forward to spending a lifetime with everyone here. It was hard for me to even consider signing my life away to a noble who could very well treat me poorly. If I had to choose between wasting away with my family or slaving away for a noble, well, at the moment, I would rather choose the former. Well, in that case, you've got to decide on your future before you can do anything else. If you don't want to join the Gilberta Company for the connections to nobles, you should think about joining another store. To be honest, if you think of products and let's make them, you might not even need to join a store if you keep your rights and cuts of the profits straight, said Otto. I gave him a big nod. Up until now, I had been focusing on joining a store of Let's and working with him, but as Otto said, I didn't have to join a store considering what I was capable of doing. I gave another nod, smaller this time, and Otto smiled so warmly he actually ended up looking suspicious. I have an idea. Why don't you act as a professional writer of sorts, writing letters and dealing with paperwork on others' behalf, while keeping your business contributions to just thinking up new products. You can sell things to Benno and help out here when you're feeling up to it, just like you have been. I think that'll be best for your health. Otto was right in that living life as I had been would be best for maintaining my health, but... His smile was so suspicious I wanted to disagree. Well, in either case, talk about this with your family. For now, we've rested enough. Let's get back to work. Otto cleaned up our cups and took out my slate to get back to checking the math on the paperwork. Talk of my family, I feel like Dad will go crazy if he learns I only have a year left to live. Yeah, I think anybody would freak out when they heard that someone they cared about so much would only have a year to live. Let's go home, Mine. Well, there he is. Thanks for your help today. I owe you my life, Mine. By the time Dad's shift ended and he came to get me, I had done so much math that I felt dizzy. Numbers appeared in my head when I shut my eyes. Oh, you overworked it. But Otto looked fine despite using the calculator constantly, so maybe it was just impossible for me to do a job that involved so much constant math. Dad, won't you be cold? Dad was carrying me home along a somewhat snowy road with his coat over me. I was warm thanks to the coat, but he was opening up so much that I could imagine how cold he was. But he just shook his head with a grin. I'm not cold with you this close to me. Never felt this warm in my life. Oh. Dad loved his family to a fault. We were his everything. How would he react when I told him about my devouring? His smile made my heart freeze up. I was scared, but I couldn't avoid the topic any longer. Something wrong, Mine? You're looking down. Did Otto yell at you? No, he didn't. I have something to talk to you about, Dad. It's about my sickness. I said, and that alone made him freeze in place. His smile hardened into a thin line, and he looked at me with the most serious expression I had ever seen on him. He lowered his eyes for a moment, then sped up his pace as if running from something. Let's talk about it once we get home. Don't want to leave out Tuli and your mother. Dad hugged me tighter, protectively, as if he had a bad feeling about this and wanted to keep... There is no way you're going to be able to keep her safe from this sickness. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, curing it, anyway, because... Yeah, we y'all's pay. Only way it's going to help is if mine pays, too. Welcome back. Family meeting. Tuli opened the door for us with a smile, blinked a few times at us, then furrowed her brows with worry. What's wrong, Dad? You look kind of upset. Was it cold outside? Or was mine too heavy? Tuli is mean, I pouted, and Dad forced a laugh. Mine's too light. She needs to get a little bigger, he said, while setting me down and patting my head. Tuli giggled, relieved at the sight of Dad relaxing a bit. She then said, Sorry. Brushing off the snow still stuck on me. The snow started turning into a blizzard on the way back. It was super cold. Clapping for Tuli on the inside for lightening the mood. I pursed my lips and complained about the cold. Tuli copied me and pursed her lips too. Dad was carrying you and put you in his coat, so I bet it wasn't cold at all. He couldn't do that for me. I sure could, Dad replied before scooping Tuli up. You probably couldn't take her all the way to the gate, though, I shot back before heading to the bedroom to put away my bag and coat. Mom was making dinner in the kitchen. Welcome back. Let's eat before we do anything else. She had guessed from Dad's tense demeanor and expression that something was up. She furrowed her brows for a moment, then got to work setting the table with a slight smile. Okay, eat up. At Mom's urging, we began eating a much more quiet meal than normal. I hadn't said anything yet, but Dad's brows were furrowed hard. Mom was keeping her eyes on the table. Tuli was watching us worried. The atmosphere was already dark. I spooned the hot soup into my mouth while glancing at my family. Should I really tell them about this? Won't Dad go on a rampage if he learns I have a year left to live? How should I tell him about it? I want to hide how much I spent on the magic tool, if possible. I could only think of the conversation we would have after dinner, and my heart was pounding the whole time. Thank you, it was very good. We put our utensils down, and Mom set cups of tea made from calming herbs onto the table. I suppose now it's time for the talk. So Mama, she sat next to Dad, who slowly shook his head. His light brown eyes were locked onto me. His normal grin was nowhere to be seen, and his eyes were scarily serious, so much so that I gulped. Mine's the one who has something to say, not me, revealed Dad, leading everyone else to lock their eyes onto me as well. I was just talking with my family, but I was so nervous that my throat felt bone dry. What should I start with? What kind of explanation would help them understand the best? Hesitant thoughts started through my mind, and the actual explanation just wasn't coming out. Sweat beaded on my brow, and the more I panicked, the blanker my mind became. It's about my sickness, but, my mouth flapped as I searched for words. Dad narrowed his eyes. You stayed at the Guildmaster's house for a few days and came back cured. Am I missing something? No, not cured. Well, basically, I can't be cured. My head was so empty that I forgot the preamble and just jumped straight to the point. That was a bombshell for my family, and after a moment of stunned silence, everyone opened their eyes and somebody gasped. Dad immediately stood up so hard his chair fell back, and he pounded the table with his fist. What do you mean it can't be cured? The Guildmaster said you are better. Did he lie to us? You're not cured, Mine? Dad and Tuli leaned toward me from the side. I waved my hands desperately to try and calm them down and get them back in their seats. Please, stay calm and sit down. There's not much I can really know, and I'm not sure where to start my explanation, so I'll just be saying the first thing that comes to mind, so... Dad sat down, grinding his teeth so hard I could hear it. Mom picked up her cup with a shaking hand, maybe trying to calm herself down somehow. She took a small sip and urged me onwards. Well, please do your best. I saw Tuli reaching for her cup, so I did the same and took a sip before continuing. The thing is, I'm sick with something called the devouring. It's really rare. Yeah, I've never heard of it, Dad said with a nod. Tuli murmured quietly with her cup in hand. Mine told me about it. She said it takes a ton of money to cure. This time, Mom's the one who stood up with her eyes wide. She looked horrified. I could guess that she realized we hadn't paid the guildmaster for what he did to cure me. I had wanted to hide how much I spent on the magic tool, but I guess that wouldn't be possible. Mom, I'll explain, so just listen for now. She sat down slowly, her eyes making it clear that she had a lot to say. With everyone's focus back on me, I started explaining what the devouring was. The devouring is a heat that lives in my body, basically, and it grows over time. When I get really mad or so disappointed I want to die, it rampages inside of me on its own and basically eats me alive from within. Eats you alive? Tuli stared at me looking ghostly pale. She looked at my hair and fingertips, checking to see if any parts of me had already been. Not that way! I can usually control the devouring heat myself. I can, like, squeeze it into a box inside of me, which works, but then it just keeps growing. Well, what happens when it grows too big? Asked Tuli, squeezing my hand while shaking. I can't keep it in the box anymore, and it bursts out and starts to kind of overflow from my body. I get swallowed by it before it overflows, and that's what happened last time. It burst out, started leaking out of me, and I was almost eaten alive. The guildmaster used a magic tool to suck the heat out of me. It really did suck out a lot, but since it grows back, I'll never be completely cured. Tuli groaned a little and glared at me with wet eyes on the verge of tears. Or maybe I should say she was trying so hard to hold the tears in that it just looked like she was glaring at me. Looking at her made me tear up a little too, so I looked away and took another sip. Frida said that I'm not growing much bigger because the heat is eating me bit by bit. To cure the devouring, quote-unquote, we need magic tools to keep sucking the heat out, but only nobles have them, which means they're super expensive and can only buy them if you have a lot of connections to the nobility, like the guildmaster's family does. So that means the guildmaster did save you then, temporarily. Dad collapsed into his chair and spoke in a raspy voice, having lost the one target he could have blamed for this. He gave me one of the magic tools he had gathered for Frida, but he doesn't have any more to give me, and he said I'll have to decide on my future for myself. Your future? There's some way to cure it? Dad leaned forward again. Not in a good way, dude. Hope in his eyes. Tuli's eyes were shining with hopes as well behind the built-up tears. Their hope hurt me as I informed them that I had an option to potentially save my life at the cost of everything else. They said I have two choices. Sign a contract with the noble and become their slave, or live with my family and rot away. Their slave? I don't understand. Dad's expression twisted with bewilderment. Tuli also tilted her head in confusion, not really understanding what I meant. Mom alone paled and tightened her grip on her cup. She knows. She has an idea of what is going on. She was squeezing so hard that her fingertips went white. Frida's healthy because she signed a contract with the noble who gave her magic tools. She said she managed to get good terms because she belongs to a powerful and rich merchant family. We don't have connections to the nobles, so they'll have full control over the contract, and we have no idea how they'll treat me. Can't really call that living, whispered Dad weakly. I nodded solemnly. It was precisely because I had lived my life as Urano once before that I couldn't bear to live a life as a noble slave. Mine. What about the money? The magic tool they used on you couldn't have been free, right? Mom finally spoke, unable to wait a moment longer. I nodded, disappointed on the inside that I hadn't been able to avoid this subject. I paid for it. Don't worry. How much was it? Well, a lot, but when you consider it saved my life... I'm asking how much it costs. You'll tell us, won't you? No secrets. I meandered about the subject, and Mom's brows shot up with anger. I groaned to myself and answered while looking away. 2 small golds and 8 large silver. That was the equivalent to 2.5 years of Dad's salaries. Everyone's eyes widened and their jaws dropped. 2 small golds and 8 large silver? How did you earn that much money? Benno bought the rights to my simple all-in-one shampoo. I traded him the right to make, sell, and price it. In return, he... What? The all-in-one shampoo was that expensive? Tuli cried out in shock, which made sense given how she'd been squeezing the oil herself for so long. It took time and effort to make the shampoo, but cost nothing since all the materials could be gathered in the forest. Tuli hadn't expected at all for it to be worth so much money. It turns out the nobles will buy it for a lot of money. He already has a workshop making it, and I started talking to Tully about the Rensham workshop when Dad shook his head and looked at me with a grim expression. That's in the past. What we want to hear about is the future. You're going to get real sick again no matter what, yeah? How long until then? It sounds like you already know. I'm guessing you changed the subject because you didn't want to tell us. I can't hide anything from you, can I? I let out a sigh at Dad's unexpected sharpness. He had kicked his chair back and pounded the table just from hearing that my sickness was incurable. How could I tell him that how long I have left to live? I couldn't, but I didn't have a choice. I'm your father. It's the least I can do. Come on, don't look away. He glared at me with his light brown eyes. It was clear he wouldn't be fooled by anything and wouldn't let me leave until I answered. So I nodded in defeat and spoke. A year at best. I said I'd be lucky to live for another year, so I should figure out what to do before then. The uncomfortable silence turned into a painful silence. I thought Dad would go berserk, but he just shut his eyes, brows furrowed, and head lowered. The silence was broken by Tully choking out, Mine, you're gonna die? It's just a year. That's not fair. Well, life isn't fair, Tully. You should know that. She gave up on holding back her tears and started sobbing loudly, jumping off her chair to cling to me. I wrapped my arms around her and patted her back gently to calm her. It'll be okay, Tully. I honestly should be dead already. Think of this as me getting an extra year of life thanks to the guildmaster selling me a magic tool. I said that to calm her down, but it was just oil on the fire. Tully shook her head as her tears streamed down her face. Don't say that. Don't say that you should be dead. It's only a year. I hate that. You are finally getting better. You are finally going to the forest with me. I don't want you to... Well, duh! We know this! Dang it! Why does this have to be a freaking light novel? As Urano, I had died to a sudden earthquake, so I never saw my family's grieving. I wonder if they cried for me like Tully was now. I imagine your mom probably did at least. And I'm guessing that friend from the first volume, the one that had walked you home that time before the earthquake, probably did too. I wonder if they cried for me like Tully was now. I definitely made them cry, and now I was making my second family cry as well. I was a bad daughter no matter when or where I was born. That is not your fault, girl. Don't cry, Tully, please. I'll try to see if I can find something other than magic tools that can do something about the devouring heat. I mean, the Trumba fruit could, but whatever. What'll happen if you can't? You'll die, Mine. I don't want you to die. She clung to me and cried so hard it hurt my heart. My eyes heated up, and even though I was trying to hold the tears in, they started flowing out. Tully, don't cry. I'm the one who wants to cry. Sorry, Mine. I'll look too. I'll try to find some way to cure you, but I want to stop crying, but I can't. Oh. I was crying and patting Tully's back as she worked hard to stop crying herself when Dad quietly asked a question. What do you think, Mine? I don't want to live apart from my family with nobles who could treat me like a slave. Frida says she only gets to live with her family until adulthood because the noble she signed with is allowing it. Maybe the one I signed with won't? When then? I already knew the answer to that. They'll immediately take me away. I don't think many nobles will wait. Yeah. I had no idea how nobles intended to use children with the devouring, but I can imagine that it was rare for time to be given. If I was taken away right after signing the contract, I would have had even less time with my family before I die. That's why I think I would rather just stay with you guys until I die. I don't want to live without my family. Mine. Oh, come on! I already got friggin' tomorrow to deal with. Father's Day. Oh. Sorry guys, if you hear me, if my voice changes, then you know why. Because most of you guys know that my father recently passed away, and this is going to be our first Father's Day without him, so this ain't helping. This is not helping at all. Tears were forming in Mom's eyes, too. She looked away and rubbed her eyes so we couldn't see. Dad was looking at me with a blank look on his face that could barely be called an expression. I have another year left. I want to live the rest of my life to its fullest so I can die without regrets. Can I stay here, or should I go live with a noble? Oh, God. Stay with me, Mine. I don't want you to go away, cried Tully, and my parents both done it with that sanctity thing. I was so happy that they would let me stay that I wiped my tears away and smiled. Okay, so I have something else I need to talk about too. There's more? Said Mom, looking at me with surprise. I'm hoping that this one is a nice one, but me telling them about my disease had partly been preparation for what came next. I wanted to discuss my future after they understood my disease as well as they could. It's about my job, I said. You're gonna be a merchant, are you? Aren't you? Dad furrowed his brows in puzzlement. I continued feeling relieved that Dad was calmly listening to me and not going on a berserk rampage. I don't think he would do that. I mean, what would he rampage against? Seriously. That was the plan, but I realized I wasn't thinking far enough ahead or really enough at all. I'm really just not strong enough to work a job. Otto told me I wouldn't be able to handle life as a merchant. He says I would just be dead weight that drags Benno's store down. Freaking Otto, murmured Dad with clear anger. That was bad. I didn't want Otto to get punished for telling me the truth. I hurriedly explained the suggestion that Otto had given me. But the thing is, he said it would be best for my health if I worked at home as a writer or something and continued selling things to Benno and helping out at the gate where I can. Yeah, Otto's right. You should stay at home. No need to push yourself. Dad grinned, looking a little more happy now. Tuli's still clinging to me, and Mom both nodded in agreement repeatedly. I promised Benno I would be his apprentice. That won't cause any problems, right? I asked the question that was the point of this entire discussion. My parents knew how jobs worked, and I didn't. Maybe breaking that kind of promise would be harder than I thought? You're not officially his apprentice yet, and he doesn't want you collapsing during work either, so you'd be fine with telling him what you told us. Okay, I hate to lose a job I work so hard to get, but I'll try looking for one that suits my health better. It might be smart to consult with Benno over what kind of jobs I could do at home. That can wait until spring. We had been talking for so long, at the moment the conversation died, I let out a huge yawn. Seeing that, Mom clapped her hands together. If that's all you have to discuss, I think we should head to bed. It's late. Good night. Good night. I headed to the bedroom with Tuli, who was still crying, and got into bed with her. Don't cry, Tuli. I like it when you smile. We'll have lots of fun tomorrow, okay? Definitely. We'll play together a lot. I'll stay with you. I consoled Tuli as I got the covers over me. Tuli wiggled beneath my blankets and clung to me before sleeping, as if saying she wouldn't let me go anywhere. Well, you kinda can't go anywhere, girl. It's too cold. I closed my eyes too, and I bothered it all if it meant calming her down. I had thought that Dad would have gone more berserk and made more of a fuss, but contrary to my expectations, he listened to what I had to say very seriously. I gently fell asleep too, while sighing in relief that I had finally talked to my family about this. I had let Tuli sleep with me to calm her down, but I woke up to her hugging my neck a little too tightly. It was so hard to breathe that I hurriedly unwrapped her arms and wiggled away to escape. That would kill me, devouring or not. I need air to live. I blinked while rubbing my neck. Normally it was pitch black when I woke up at night, but light was streaming into the bedroom. Oh boy, here we go. I rubbed my sleepy eyes several times, but it seemed I wasn't dreaming. The door was half open and the hearth still had its fire lit. Since I didn't hear anyone talking, it was likely that both my parents were awake. I looked at the dark bed next to mine and saw a bump in the corner indicating that Mom had already gone to sleep. Maybe she forgot to turn off the fire? I don't think she would. Really, Benjamin? Seriously? Oh boy, here we go. I climbed off the bed carefully so as to not wake up Tuli and walked to the kitchen. There I saw Dad alone, drinking beer with only the fire lighting up the dim room. He wasn't drinking cheerily the way he normally did. He was crying quietly as he drank. Yeah, he held it all in until you guys went to bed. It was like hearing the wordless agony he had kept hidden before. I quickly looked away and returned to bed. Oh, I'm glad they didn't give us a freaking picture on that. That would have been sad. Okay. Go away, stupid thing. Okay. Report to Lutz. Everything was awkward that day after the family meeting. Dad's smile had a tinge of sadness to it. Mom tugged me out of nowhere multiple times, and Tuli would randomly start crying. But as the days passed, we slowly returned to the lifestyle we had before the meeting. You don't have to do that, Mine. I'll do it. But I can do it just fine. Weren't you the one who said I had to learn how to do this, Tuli? Things were definitely the same as they used to be, except that Tuli had become even more overprotective of me at the aspect of encouraging my independence. Wow, it's so bright. We need to get some peruse. I was awakened by Tuli's voice. The sky was still murky and dark, but there weren't any clouds. Dim light sneaking its way into our room hinted at the good weather. And Tuli threw out the window open, allowing a burst of cold outside air to flood in. Tuli, it's cold! Whoopsies! She closed the window and hurriedly got to work eating breakfast. I also went and nommed away at my food while everyone else rushed through theirs. Mom and Dad finished quickly and began preparing the hearth and firewood. As Dad lined up wood next to the door, he turned to look at me chewing my bread. What are you going to do, mine? Want to wait at the gate? Maybe I should go gather peruse, too. According to what Tuli had told me, Peru trees were weird fantasy plants, but in a good, not terrifying way. Her explanation of a spinny, shining tree, or whatever, didn't exactly give me a clear mental image of it, so I wanted to see one for myself. But my innocent suggestion was met with angry glares from my whole family. No, you're either staying at home or helping at the gate. Gathering peruse is very difficult, too much for you to handle. You'll definitely get sick. Yeah, you're not good at climbing trees, and you can't walk through the snow, so you won't be able to do anything. Everyone shot down the idea of me coming along to help them. They were right that I couldn't even walk to the gate through all the snow, and would basically be a dead weight in a snowy forest. Okay, Peru gathering ends at noon, right? I'll help at the gate until then. I grabbed my tote bag and started packing for the gate. I thought that since Dad had today off, that Otto might not be at work either, but it seemed that around this time of year, Otto went to the gate basically every day. We left once both I and the Peru gathering tools were on our slightly large sled. Dad pulled the sled in the direction of the southern gate, where a crowd of other city-goers were also heading, doubtlessly to gather peruse as well. The air was so cold it felt like needles on my skin, but everyone was so excited to gather peruse that I got excited too. It was like a festival. Sorry, but take care of mine for me. She's helping Otto out until noon. Yes, sir. Dad set me down gently by the gate. I waved goodbye to everyone and greeted the guard, who I never knew on sight before heading to the night watch room, like always with him. Good morning, Mr. Otto. Huh? Mine? I thought the captain had today off. Otto blinked in surprise, and I nodded with a small smile. It's sunny today, so everyone's going to gather peruse. I can help while waiting for them to get back. Ah, I get it. Guess we've got until noon, then. Otto grinned, figuring out the situation right away, and started piling up paperwork that needed its map checked. I'm right below you, little brother. Literally. His desk is the equivalent of right next to me, essentially. Once he scooted aside to give me some space, I thanked him for giving me advice earlier. Mr. Otto, thank you for the other day. I talked to my family about my devouring, and we decided to search for a job I can do at home. I've been thinking about telling Mr. Benno when spring comes. Makes sense, your health's the most important thing here. I can assign you some work to do at home if Benno can't think of any jobs for you, so just ask whenever you're ready. Okay, thank you. His pitch-black grin made me as nervous as always, but I felt so relieved in general that I got right to work with a smile on my face. My family returned from the forest after noon passed, and I once again got on the sled as we returned home. Since all three of them had gone gathering, we got 6 whole peruse this time. That was thanks in part to Mom working extra hard now that she knew even the wrung-out Peru leftovers were useful for something. We juiced the peruse while Mom got lunch ready. Tuli took the thinnest twig from the fireplace pile and poked it into the Peru. That was all it took for the Peru peel to tear. Mine, here it comes! I caught the thick white fruit juice with a cup, making sure not to spill any. I waited for the juice to stop flowing out, with my heart dancing at the sweet smell, upon which Tuli handed over the fruit to Dad. Dad crushed the fruit and got out the oil. It didn't take long at all since he could use the pressure weights. We saved the leftovers of the first 4 fruits for ourselves and decided to bring the rest to Lutz's to trade for eggs. After eating, I brought both the Peru leftovers and a new recipe to Lutz's. If they at least had an oven, I could make gratin or even pizza. But my options were limited by the fact that they only had a pot and metal pan. Hi, Lutz, could you trade us some eggs for these? I thought up a new recipe we could try out. Sounds good, my brothers aren't home. You're gonna have to come inside and wait. Where'd everybody go? Are they playing 'cause it's bright out? They're shoveling snow to earn some pocket money. I didn't know how it worked since I had never participated, but apparently shoveling snow was a good way for kids to earn pocket money. Such was the value of hard labor. Why'd you stay behind, Lutz? Peruse just melt if you don't squeeze them dry, remember? It was true that peruse were a high priority, but it felt like Lutz's brothers had just pushed chores onto him so they could go make money. It was frustrating, but if Lutz himself wasn't saying anything, it wasn't my place to butt in where I didn't belong. I would have liked to at least help him juice and drain the peruse, but that took strength which I lacked. All I could do was watch Let's swing the hammer and Carla collect the juices. I watched them work in a daze, then remembered I hadn't told Let's about my family's meeting, how my family's meeting went. I needed to tell him that I had decided not to join Benno's store. Let's. I decided not to become Benno's apprentice. Huh? Why? Let's looked my way with his eyes wide open and the hammer still in the air. Carla looked at me with wide eyes of her own. Remember what Mom said? I would just be dead weight to you. There's no way I can work there when I'm this weak and sickly. I talked about it with Otto, and he pointed out that there were plenty of other problems with me working with Benno. Like what? Let's urged me on with a glance as he got back to swinging the hammer. What would our co-workers think of a new apprentice who gets sick all the time and barely ever works? Ah, replied Let's as he swung the hammer. Carla closed her eyes as she pressed weights against Peru. You'd make things harder on them, plus yourself since you'd miss lessons and the like. That's right, and on top of that, I plan to make a lot of new products. Can you imagine how much money I'd make from them? An apprentice that barely works and makes a ton of money would just make everybody mad. You've got a point, Let's nodded, but Carla's eyes widened. Well, I continued, the high pay goes for you too, but I think you won't have the same problem. If you work hard enough and take your job seriously, it might be smart to talk to Benno about this. Yeah, I'll bring it up to him once spring comes. At the very least, Benno could split his wages from his cut of the profit and mostly keep it a secret. He could pay us just by tapping his guild card against ours, for instance. Then Les asked, if you're not going to join Benno's store, what'll you do after your baptism? I'm not sure what's going to happen with my sickness, so for now, I'm going to stick to doing paperwork and stuff at home. Thinking up new products, helping at the gate, basically the same things I've been doing up until now. Alright, that's probably the best for keeping you healthy. Let's agree, just made me sigh in relief. Carla looked relieved too. If mine's not going, that means you don't have to either, Let's. Now you can be a craftsman. Why did she think that Les would stop being a merchant because I had? Because she thinks that he's becoming a merchant because you are. That's why. I tilted my head in confusion and Letz's eyebrows shot up in anger at the thorough relief in his mother's voice. What are you talking about, Mom? What do you mean, what? Carla sincerely didn't understand, and Luck clicked his tongue before shouting, I want to be a merchant. Mine's got nothing to do with it. I've been dragging her into this, not the other way around, said Let's, surprising Carla so much that she stared at him in shock. You what? Does that mean you're still planning to be— Yes! What are you to say? Duh! I really want to be a traveling merchant, but I heard about the city's citizenship from a former traveling merchant and decided to just be a merchant here in this city. You never said anything about it before. I did, you just didn't listen or you didn't care. It seemed like they really hadn't understood each other. Carla looked shocked like she had never heard any of this before. I kept silent, figuring that this was a conversation between family that I had no place in. I remember you saying you wanted to be a traveling merchant, sure, but that's just nonsense all kids say. It's like saying someone what dream you had, it's like telling someone what dream you had last night. I never thought for a second you were serious about it. I was just waiting for you to wake up and see reality, said Carla, winking, shaking her head while looking nervously at Let's and me. I could tell that she was thrown off by the fact that, contrary to her expectations, Let's had been completely serious. And I can understand that. Most people who live in this city never left it. Aside from going to the forest or some nearby farming villages, traveling merchants were foreigners who came and went like the wind. They weren't a goal to live one's life working towards. Carla's expecting Let's to wake up and see reality was completely normal here. I wanted to be a traveling merchant for real. I wanted to leave this town and go to places I'd never been before. I wanted to see with my own eyes the places I could only ever heard about in stories before, and I still want all those things. Carla started to stand up and say something. I could tell from her expression that it was going to be a harsh scolding. However, Let's continued before she could say anything. But I talked to someone who used to be a traveling merchant. He said only an idiot would give up their city's citizenship. He said traveling merchants don't take apprentices, and I wouldn't get anywhere with them. Well, he's right. Carla let out a tiny sigh of relief and sat back down. People really did hate the idea of their children becoming traveling merchants. I hadn't taken it too seriously, considering it's a fun job where you travel the world, but it seems I still lack knowledge of how this world worked. I was thinking of just becoming a traveling merchant on my own without any help, but mine gave me a better idea. She said I could just become a normal city merchant. Normal merchants would probably go to other towns to buy things and stuff. I wouldn't have to risk everything on somehow becoming a traveling merchant. She said it'd be much more realistic and likely for me to succeed as a city merchant. Well, that'd definitely be better, so I asked a merchant to make me his apprentice. He turned me down at first, since I'm just the friend of a friend of a friend, though. Yeah, figures, replied Carla with a tired voice and a shrug. She was clear she was in a state of disbelief. She hadn't expected her son to be completely serious about becoming a traveling merchant. Considering how apprenticeships worked in this city, there was almost a zero chance of Let's becoming a merchant apprentice. Perhaps that was why Carla hadn't taken him seriously, when he mentioned wanting to become a merchant. It was even possible that she hadn't entirely believed him when he said he could become a merchant apprentice. But he gave us a job and said he'd take us as his apprentices if we did it. Me and mine already finished it, and he promised to take us as apprentices. I'll become one even if mine doesn't. I can, and I will. Carla finally realized that Lutz had paved his own way through life with his own 2 hands. She looked at him with somewhat hard eyes, having listened to him seriously for the first time. Lutz, are you really going to ignore your parents and become a merchant against our will? You think that'll work out? I'll be a merchant, even if it means being a live-in apprentice. I worked hard of mine to make this dream a reality. I'm not going to give up now. A live-in apprentice? Live-in apprentices live in the worst conditions possible. First of all, apprentices only work for half the week, so they don't get paid much. To make matters worse, they didn't have any family they could rely on. It was both physically taxing and time-consuming. For a single child to live all on their own, handling all the chores themselves, they tended to live in the attic, which meant hot summers and cold winters. Only the lucky ones had proper roofs that didn't leak. Carrying their stuff around and getting water up the stairs were both physically draining. It may even stink something awful, since it wasn't unheard of for people to raise livestock like chickens in their attic. There was no place to cook food unlike a home rented to a whole family, so they would have to borrow a kitchen from their employer or eat out. Naturally, a lifestyle like that led to empty purses, and most could only survive by getting advance pay at the cost of growing debt. The employer would look after them, but only to the extent of keeping them alive. Live-in apprentices were fated to live a life of constant work and suffering until adulthood. Let's think for just a second. You couldn't survive a life like that. No reasonable parent in the world would want such a hard life for their children. Carla basically screamed in fear at the idea, but Let's just shrugged. I could survive. I'm already preparing for it. Well, he wouldn't have to be a live-in apprentice if you guys would just support him. Then he wouldn't have to worry about that. Lutz was a special case in that he could save money this spring by selling paper. He would have a hefty sum ready by his baptism if we used the bark we saved in the storage building. The plan was for him to have money left over, even after buying the clothes and whatnot he needed to become a merchant apprentice. Not to mention that due to him having every other day off as an apprentice, he'd be able to keep helping me make and sell products. He'd profit from their sales and doubtlessly end up with much more money than an average apprentice. I can imagine that he still wouldn't have a comfortable life per se, but at least he wouldn't be experiencing crushing poverty. The main thing was that he probably wouldn't be able to afford to rent a whole room, which meant living in a terrible location for some time. You're preparing for it? That means you're serious, doesn't it? I'm serious. After a long moment of silence, Carla let out a heavy sigh, like she shrugged with a complicated expression that looked both like she had and hadn't given up after learning about how serious Lutz was. I still think it'd be safer and better for you to just have a stable craftsman job. Merchants have big highs, but really big hard lows. If I become a craftsman like Dad says, I'll end up stuck like this forever. No, thanks. Pouted Lutz with clear frustration. Carla frowned. He had basically said he wasn't happy with his current life, which upset her. What do you mean stuck like this? My brothers do whatever they want and push chores onto me. They take stuff from me when they feel like it, and I'm left with nothing. Well, they're your brothers. They take stuff from you, but they give you some stuff, right? No. Carla furrowed her brows troubled, and Lutz shot her right down. What are you talking about? The food they take never comes back, and the only things they ever give me are messed up hand-me-downs. Sometimes their hand-me-downs are so awful you gotta buy me something new, but they steal those too. Just like me, everything Lutz had was a hand-me-down. But unlike how Thule always helped me out, Thule's brothers ruled him with iron fists. That made a big difference. I learned from working hard with mine that on our merchant work that stuff I do on my own sticks with me. I want to see how far I can keep going with my own strength. A craftsman? I'm not even thinking about becoming one at this point. Lutz had been held underwater by his family for his whole life and had broken free. He had secured a path in his dreams and escaped their rule. Carla hung her head and whispered, I didn't know you were that serious about this. I thought she was just dragging you around. I know. I'll be doing this job for my whole life. I wouldn't take it if I didn't want to. I've been opposed to you being a merchant because I thought you were just messing around, you know. Carla let out a heavy sigh and lowered her eyes. She thought for a while, then slowly raised her head and gave a resigned smile. If you've thought it through this much and are even prepared to run away from home, well, I think you should do what you want. You should do your best and see how it goes. Your dad won't like it, but I'll be on your side. Really? Thanks, Mom. Lutz's expression lit up. He had given up on his family ever understanding him. After his eyes widened in disbelief, he jumped with joy. I couldn't help but smile as Lutz finally acting like a kid his age instead of just worrying about work in his future. Having even just a single family member on your side means a lot. Lutz's good mood didn't falter even after his brothers came home. We all worked together to make a new recipe. Warm up the metal pan, Zasha, I instructed Lutz. You got lots of that grated cheese onto the Peru leftovers. And Rolf, could you chop up the large leaves for me? Or loggy leaves for me? I dialed at work while adding Peru oil and salt to the bowl of leftovers that Lutz was putting the cheese onto. After putting in the basil-esque herbs that Ralph chopped up for me, all we had to do was mix it well and cook it. The pan's all heated up. Okay, time for cooking. We can make it just like a Peru cake. We cooked it all together and ate it after the melted cheese ended up crunchy. It looked like okonomiyaki, a popular kind of Japanese savory pancake, but the cheese made it taste like Western food. This recipe had been inspired by all the times I chopped up the leftover noodles after boiling what I needed for sumen or spaghetti. They're simple to make, but they're really filling. They're even better if you added super chopped up ham and vegetables. That'll make this a real meal instead of just a snack like Peru cakes are. Everyone smiled, enjoying the food as they ate. At some point, Ralph reached out to steal one of Lutz's extra pancakes, but Carlos smacked his hand away. Don't steal other people's food. It's greedy. If you want more, make it yourself. Oh ho ho! Your mama helping you out there. So we're both shocked by Carla's smack. She smiled warmly. She saw Ralph get to work cooking a new one for himself and Lutz eating his food peacefully. It seemed that Lutz's home problems wouldn't be so bad now that he had a powerful ally in his mother. Meanwhile, I cycled through tutoring Lutz, helping at the gate, and getting stuck in bed with fever. Lutz brought the pin parts for hairpins over, studied hard here, and sometimes went to the Gilberta company to sell our finished hairpins. Over time, the blizzards weakened and foretold the end of both winter and my shut-in lifestyle. How far have I gotten? Okay, I think I'm going to end this part up here, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.